The biting autumn wind whipped around Eliza Bennett as she huddled against the rough wooden wall of the rusty nail saloon, clutching her infant daughter to her chest. Provo, Wyoming Territory, 1878, a town where she knew no one and nothing except the betrayal that had left her stranded with only a weathered carpet bag and a 3-month-old baby. Tears stung her eyes as the setting sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street, the approaching night promising nothing but cold and uncertainty. Eliza tucked the thin blanket more securely around little Rose, who mercifully slept despite the commotion from inside the saloon. She had been sitting there for hours, ever since the stagecoach driver had unceremoniously dropped her off with a tip of his hat, and not a care for what might become of a young woman and her child in a frontier town as night approached. "You can't stay here, miss." The saloon owner had made that clear enough when she tried to enter earlier. "This ain't no place for a lady with a baby." The sound of approaching boots made Eliza stiffen, instinctively turning to shield Rose from whatever threat might be coming. She looked up to see a tall figure silhouetted against the last rays of daylight. "Madam? You've been sitting here since noon." His voice was deep but gentle, with a slight drawl that marked him as not originally from these parts. As he stepped closer, she could make out a strong-featured face beneath a well-worn Stetson, kind blue eyes assessing her situation with a frown. I have nowhere to go," Eliza admitted, hating how weak her voice sounded. The man, clearly a cowboy from his attire and the faint smell of horses and leather, crouched down to her level, keeping a respectful distance. "Name's Beau Donovan. I run the Double D Ranch about 5 miles outside of town." He glanced at the baby and then back at her face. "Night's coming fast, and it's gonna get mighty cold. You're coming home with me." It wasn't a question, and in her desperate situation, Eliza found she didn't have the strength to argue. "My sister-in-law's at the ranch," he added, seeming to read the hesitation in her eyes. "You'll be proper safe, I promise you that." When Eliza nodded, too exhausted to protest, Beau carefully lifted her carpet bag with one hand and offered her the other. "My wagon's just down the street. Can you walk?" The journey to the Double D Ranch passed in near silence, broken only by Beau's occasional soft words to his horses and Rose's small whimpers when she stirred. The wagon swayed gently as they left the town behind, moving through open country bathed in the silvery glow of a rising moon. Eliza kept her eyes fixed on the road ahead, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. But something about the quiet confidence of the man beside her, the careful way he had helped her into the wagon, and the fact that he hadn't pressed her with questions gave her a fragile sense of security. "Almost there," Beau said after what seemed like hours. "You can see the lights of the ranch house up ahead." True to his word, warm yellow light soon beckoned from the windows of a substantial log home, smoke curling from the chimney into the night sky. As they pulled up to the house, the front door swung open, and a woman with honey-colored hair hurried out, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "Beau? What in heaven's name?" She stopped short when she saw Eliza and the baby. "Mary, this is..." Beau trailed off, realizing he hadn't even asked for her name. "Eliza Bennett," she supplied quietly. "And this is Rose." Mary's face softened immediately. "Well, Miss Bennett, let's get you and little Rose inside where it's warm. I'm Mary Donovan, Beau's sister-in-law." The interior of the ranch house was warm and inviting, with a large stone fireplace dominating the main room. Simple but sturdy furniture filled the space: a pine table with chairs, a sofa covered in a colorful quilt, and several rocking chairs. The smell of fresh baked bread and stew made Eliza's stomach growl, reminding her she hadn't eaten since the previous evening. "Sit down by the fire," Mary insisted, guiding Eliza to one of the rocking chairs. "I'll warm some milk for the baby and fix you a plate." Beau hung his hat on a peg by the door and set Eliza's bag down. "I'll go tend to the horses," he said, clearly giving the women space to get acquainted. As soon as he was gone, Mary sat in the chair opposite Eliza. "Now, I won't pry into your business tonight, you look dead on your feet. But I want you to know you're safe here, and welcome to stay as long as you need." Tears welled in Eliza's eyes at this unexpected kindness. "Thank you," she managed. It's been difficult. I imagine so, Mary replied gently. Let's get some food in you, and then we'll set you up in the spare room. Everything looks brighter after a good night's sleep. That night, lying in a clean bed with Rose sleeping peacefully in a makeshift cradle nearby, Eliza allowed herself to truly breathe for the first time in months. The crushing weight of fear and uncertainty eased just enough for exhaustion to claim her, pulling her into dreamless sleep. Morning brought the sounds of a working ranch, distant cattle lowing, horses nickering, men calling to each other as they went about their chores. Eliza dressed quickly in her one spare dress, fed and changed Rose, and ventured out to the main room, where she found Mary kneading bread dough at the table. "Good morning!" Mary smiled warmly. "Did you sleep well? There's coffee on the stove, and I can fix you some eggs." "I slept better than I have in months," Eliza admitted. "But please, I don't want to be a burden. I can help with the work." Mary wiped flour from her hands. "You're no burden, but I won't turn down an extra pair of hands. First, though, you should eat. Growing a baby takes a lot out of a woman, and you look like you could use some fattening up." As they shared a simple breakfast, Eliza gradually revealed parts of her story. She had married Henry Vance at 19, the son of a prosperous merchant in St. Louis. When she became pregnant, Henry had seemed pleased, but as her time grew near, his true character emerged. Gambling debts, other women, and a violent temper had culminated in him abandoning her shortly after Rose's birth, leaving only a note saying he was heading west to seek his fortune in the gold fields. "I had nowhere to go," Eliza explained, cradling her coffee cup. "My parents died years ago, and Henry's family blamed me for his failings. I used what little money I had saved to follow the trail west, hoping to find him and make him take responsibility. But when I reached Provo yesterday, I learned he'd moved on weeks ago, leaving behind more debts." Mary reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "Men like that rarely change, dear. Perhaps it's a blessing in disguise." "Perhaps," Eliza agreed softly, though her heart still ached with the betrayal. "But now I'm alone, with no money and a child to raise." "You're not alone anymore," Mary said firmly. "Now, finish that coffee. Beau will want to know you're all right. He was mighty worried about you last night." Beau returned to the house at midday, removing his hat as he entered and nodding politely to Eliza. "You're looking better today, Mrs. Vance." "Miss Bennett, please," Eliza corrected him. I prefer to use my maiden name now." Something flickered in Beau's eyes, understanding, perhaps, or approval. "Miss Bennett, then. I hope you found everything comfortable." "More than comfortable. Your kindness is overwhelming." Beau shifted, clearly uncomfortable with gratitude. "It's nothing any decent person wouldn't do. Still, not many would take in a complete stranger and her child." A small smile lifted the corner of his mouth. "Well, we're not complete strangers now, are we?" Over the next few weeks, Eliza settled into life at the Double D Ranch. She quickly made herself useful, helping Mary with cooking, cleaning, and mending. The days fell into a comfortable rhythm, and Rose thrived in the peaceful environment, growing plumper and more alert. Beau, Eliza discovered, had built the ranch from nothing after returning from the Civil War. He had fought for the Union, though he spoke little of those days. His older brother Daniel had joined him initially, bringing Mary as his new bride, but Daniel had died 2 years earlier from pneumonia, leaving Beau to run the ranch alone while Mary kept the house. "He blames himself," Mary confided one evening as they sat mending by the fire. "Daniel wanted to drive the cattle to market that winter, but Beau insisted on going instead because Daniel had just recovered from a broken leg. The weather turned, and by the time Beau got back, Daniel was burning with fever. He died 3 days later." "How terrible for both of you," Eliza said softly. "It was. But Beau took it hardest. He's a good man, the best I know, but he carries the weight of the world on his shoulders." Eliza had noticed how Beau worked from dawn until dusk, how he checked and double-checked everything on the ranch, how his serious expression rarely broke into a smile except when Rose reached for him with her tiny hands. The baby had taken a shine to the tall cowboy, gurgling happily whenever he entered the room. She has good instincts, Mary observed one evening when Rose practically lunged from Eliza's arms toward Beau. Would you like to hold her? She clearly wants you to. Beau looked momentarily panicked. I don't know much about babies. There's not much to know, Eliza said, rising and gently placing Rose in his arms. Just support her head. There, like that. The sight of the rugged cowboy cradling her daughter with such tender care made something flutter in Eliza's chest. Beau looked down at Rose with wonder, his usual stern expression melting away. She's so tiny, he murmured, one callous finger gently stroking Rose's cheek. Not as tiny as she was, Eliza replied. She's growing strong here. Beau looked up, his blue eyes meeting hers. I'm glad. Both of you deserve some peace and security. As autumn deepened toward winter, Eliza found herself watching for Beau's return each day, enjoying their conversations over supper, and treasuring the quiet evenings when he would sit by the fire whittling while she sewed and Mary knitted. He was nothing like Henry, steady where Henry had been impulsive, reliable where Henry had been capricious, honest where Henry had been deceitful. The first snow fell in early November, transforming the landscape into a pristine white wonderland. Eliza stood at the window watching the flakes drift down, Rose babbling happily in her arms, when Beau stamped in from the cold, bringing the scent of winter with him. Town's buzzing with news, he announced, hanging up his coat. The railroad survey crew says the line will definitely come through Provo by next year. Mary looked up from her knitting. That'll change everything around here. For the better, I hope, Beau replied. Means we can get our cattle to market faster, get better prices for our goods. He crossed to the fire to warm his hands, pausing to chuck Rose under the chin. The baby squealed with delight, making them all laugh. She surely does like you, Eliza observed. The feeling's mutual, Beau said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. His gaze lingered on Eliza a moment longer than necessary, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. That night, unable to sleep, Eliza wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and padded quietly to the main room, intending to sit by the dying embers of the fire. She was surprised to find Beau already there, staring into the flames. Couldn't sleep? He asked softly, not turning around. No. She hesitated, then took the chair beside him. Too many thoughts. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the only sound the occasional crack from the fireplace. What will you do when spring comes? Beau finally asked, his voice low. The question caught Eliza off guard. I haven't thought that far ahead. You're welcome to stay as long as you want, he said quickly. Mary loves having you here, and the hands have gotten used to decent cooking again. Eliza smiled at that. Mary told me about the bean incident before I arrived. Beau grimaced. In my defense, I never claimed to be a cook. Another silence fell between them, this one charged with unspoken words. What if? Beau began, then cleared his throat. What if I said I'd like you to stay permanently? Eliza's heart began to race. What do you mean? Beau turned to face her fully, his expression serious. I'm not a man for pretty words, Miss Bennett. But I've grown to care for you and little Rose. More than I thought possible. He took a deep breath. I know it hasn't been long, and you've had a rough go of things. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. Just think about making the Double D your home for good. Tears pricked at Eliza's eyes. Mr. Donovan. Beau, he corrected gently. Beau, she amended. I don't know what to say. You've already done so much for us. You've done just as much for this place, he insisted. It feels like a home again, with you and Rose here. He reached out, hesitantly, and took her hand. Just think about it. That's all I'm asking for now. Eliza squeezed his hand, her heart full. I will. I promise. The winter days passed in a blur of domestic tranquility, punctuated by moments of increasing warmth between Eliza and Beau. They circled each other cautiously, both scarred by past losses, both hesitant to reach for happiness again. Rose took her first tentative steps just before Christmas, toddling from Mary's arms to Eliza's with a look of triumphant surprise on her little face. Beau had been in town, and when he returned to this news, his disappointment at missing the milestone was so genuine that Eliza impulsively took his hand. "She'll show you many more times, I'm sure," she promised. Christmas at the Double D was a simple but joyful affair. The ranch hands joined them for a feast, and gifts were exchanged, practical items mostly, but given with genuine affection. Beau presented Rose with a small wooden horse he had carved himself, perfectly smooth and safe for her curious hands and mouth. For Eliza, he had a more surprising gift, a set of leather-bound journals and a fine pen. "Mary mentioned you used to write stories before you were married," he explained, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Thought you might like to start again." Eliza was touched beyond words. Henry had always mocked her writing, calling it a useless pastime. "Thank you," she whispered. "It's perfect." The new year brought change to Provo. True to prediction, the railroad surveyors marked out the route for the tracks, and the town began to buzz with new activity and opportunities. Beau made weekly trips into town, bringing back news and supplies, and occasionally letters for Eliza from a few friends back east with whom she had reconnected through careful correspondence. One blustery March day, Beau returned from town looking unusually grim. He waited until after supper, when Rose had been put to bed, to share the news. "Had a visitor at the general store today," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Man asking about a Mrs. Vance and a baby girl." Eliza froze, her heart plummeting. "Henry?" Beau nodded slowly. "Said he was looking for his wife and child. Seems he struck it lucky in a claim up Montana way, and now he's come to collect his family." The room spun around Eliza, and she gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. "Did you tell him I was here?" "No," Beau said firmly. "Not my place to do that. But Provo's a small town, Eliza. Word will get to him eventually." Mary reached across the table to take Eliza's hand. "What do you want to do, dear?" Eliza struggled to order her thoughts. Part of her, a small, wounded part, still yearned for the dream she'd had when she married Henry, a loving husband, a complete family for Rose. But the reality of Henry's character couldn't be ignored. "He abandoned us," she said finally, her voice strengthening. "Left me with nothing but debts and heartache. He has no claim on Rose or me anymore." Beau's eyes glinted with approval. "I'll stand by whatever you decide, but I'm glad to hear you say that." "Will he come here?" Mary asked, concern evident in her voice. "Possibly," Beau admitted. "I made sure no one in town mentioned you directly, but there aren't many new mothers with babies in the area. He might start making inquiries at outlying farms and ranches." Eliza straightened her shoulders. "Then I'll face him if he comes. I won't hide." That night sleep eluded Eliza again. The thought of confronting Henry filled her with dread, not because she feared him exactly, but because she feared her own weakness. What if he made promises? What if he had truly changed? A soft knock at her door startled her. "Eliza?" Beau's voice came quietly through the wood. "Are you awake?" She wrapped her shawl around her nightgown and opened the door a crack. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong. I just..." He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "I wanted to make sure you were all right. And to tell you something important." Eliza glanced at Rose's sleeping form, then stepped into the hallway, pulling the door almost closed behind her. "What is it?" Beau took a deep breath. "I need you to know that whatever happens with your husband, you have options. You and Rose have a place here, no matter what." "Thank you," Eliza whispered. "That means more than I can say." "There's more." Beau's eyes were intense in the dim light of the hallway. "I've been wanting to say this for some time, but it never seemed right. Now I fear if I don't speak, I might lose the chance forever." Eliza's heart began to race. "What is it, Beau?" "I love you, Eliza Bennett." The words came out in a rush, as if he'd been holding them back for too long. I love you and that little girl in there like you're my own family. I know it hasn't been long, and your situation is complicated, but my feelings are clear and true. Tears welled in Eliza's eyes. Beau, He held up a hand. You don't need to answer now. With Vance showing up, everything's uncertain. I just wanted you to know where I stand, so you can make your choices with all the facts. Before she could respond, he leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, then turned and walked away, leaving Eliza trembling in the hallway, her heart full of unexpected joy amid the turmoil. Henry Vance arrived at the Double D 2 days later, riding up to the house mid-morning when Beau was out checking the herd with his ranch hands. Eliza was hanging laundry in the yard, Rose playing with wooden blocks on a blanket nearby, when the sound of approaching hoofbeats made her look up. Her heart stuttered when she recognized her husband, still handsome in an obvious way, though his face showed new lines and his clothes were far finer than when she'd last seen him. He dismounted with his usual flourish, tipping his new hat with a confident smile. There's my beautiful girls, he called, striding toward them as if expecting a warm welcome. Eliza, darling, you look well. Eliza automatically stepped between Henry and Rose. What are you doing here, Henry? His smile faltered slightly at her cool tone. Is that any way to greet your husband? I've come to bring you and the baby home. Home? Eliza repeated. And where might that be? Last I heard, you were leaving a trail of debts across 3 territories. Henry's charm slipped further. That's all behind me now. I struck it rich, Eliza. Gold claim in Montana. I've got money, real money. Enough to give you and the child everything you deserve. Her name is Rose, Eliza said firmly. And she deserves a father who doesn't abandon her. A flash of irritation crossed Henry's face. I made a mistake. I'm here to fix it. He glanced around, taking in the ranch house, the corral, the distant pastures. Nice setup they've got here. But surely you'd rather be a rich man's wife in a proper town than stuck out in the middle of nowhere? The sound of a door opening made them both turn. Mary stood on the porch, her face set in determined lines. Everything all right out here, Eliza? Yes, Mary, thank you. This is Henry Vance. Mary nodded coolly. Mr. Vance? Would you care for some coffee? Henry looked surprised at the offer but accepted with a nod. That would be welcome, thank you. Inside the house, Henry made a show of examining everything, his eyes calculating. Quaint, he pronounced, accepting the coffee Mary handed him. Very rustic. Eliza gathered Rose into her arms, drawing comfort from her solid warmth. What exactly do you want, Henry? I told you I want my family back. I've changed, Eliza. The gold strike gave me a chance to start fresh. I've got a nice house in Helena, money in the bank. We can have the life I always promised you. Eliza studied the man she had once loved, trying to see beyond the handsome face and smooth words. And what about your gambling? Your other women? Henry had the grace to look abashed. Like I said, I've changed. Nearly dying in a mind collapse gives a man perspective. For a moment, Eliza wavered. The idea of a secure future, of Rose having her father in her life, tugged at her. But then she remembered the nights of waiting, wondering if Henry would come home, the creditors at their door, the lies upon lies. I'm not going with you, Henry. His confident expression hardened. She's my daughter, Eliza. I have rights. Rights? Eliza's voice rose. You forfeited any rights when you left us with nothing. The sound of horses outside interrupted the tense exchange. Moments later, Beau strode through the door, his expression darkening when he saw Henry. Everything all right in here? He asked, his gaze finding Eliza first. Fine, she answered, unconsciously stepping closer to him. Mr. Vance was just leaving. Henry's eyes narrowed as he looked between Eliza and Beau. I see how it is. Found yourself a replacement husband already? Is that why you won't come back? Mr. Vance? Beau said, his voice deceptively calm. I suggest you watch your tone in my house. Henry stood, his hand drifting toward his hip where Eliza noticed, with a jolt of fear, he wore a pistol. This is between me and my wife. Ex-wife. Eliza corrected firmly. I filed for divorce 3 months ago, Henry. The papers should be waiting for you in Helena. Shock registered on Henry's face, quickly replaced by anger. You can't do that. She can and she did. Mary interjected. The judge in Cheyenne was most sympathetic to her situation. Henry's face flushed dark red. I'll fight this. She's my daughter, a daughter you've never so much as held. Eliza cut in. A daughter whose birth you missed because you were with another woman. A daughter you didn't even ask to name. Beau stepped forward. I think you should go now, Vance. Miss Bennett has made her position clear. Henry's hand twitched closer to his gun. Miss Bennett, is it? Already dropping my name? Henry, Eliza said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Please don't make this uglier than it needs to be. Go back to Helena, build your new life. Rose and I will build ours. For a tense moment, it seemed Henry might reach for his weapon, but something in Beau's steady gaze made him reconsider. His hand dropped to his side. This isn't over, he warned, storming toward the door. I'll be back with the law. You do that, Beau replied evenly. Sheriff Parker's a good friend. I'm sure he'd love to hear about those outstanding debts you left in Provo. The door slammed behind Henry, and seconds later they heard the sound of galloping hooves as he rode away from the ranch. Eliza's knees suddenly felt weak, and she sank into a chair, clutching Rose tightly. Are you all right? Beau asked gently, kneeling beside her. I think so, she managed. I just never thought. I didn't expect him to actually come looking for us. Mary quietly excused herself, giving them privacy. Did you mean it? Beau asked after a moment. About the divorce? Eliza nodded. Yes. I started the proceedings before I even left St. Louis. It should be final any day now. A complex mix of emotions crossed Beau's face: relief, hope, and something deeper. Eliza, about what I said the other night, I love you too, she interrupted, the words tumbling out before she could reconsider. I think I have almost since the beginning, when you found us outside that saloon and said you're coming home with me. Because that's what this place has become home. You and Mary and the ranch. This is where Rose and I belong. Beau's face transformed with joy. Hesitantly, as if she might break, he reached out and took her free hand in his. I never thought I'd find this again, a chance at family, at happiness. He leaned forward and pressed his lips gently to hers, a kiss full of promise. When they parted, Rose patted Beau's cheek with her tiny hand, making them both laugh. I think she approves, Eliza said softly. True to his word, Henry returned a week later, this time with the sheriff in tow. But Sheriff Parker, after reviewing the divorce papers Eliza produced and hearing statements from both Mary and the town doctor about Rose's health and well-being, informed Henry that he had no legal grounds to claim either his ex-wife or a child he had willfully abandoned. The law's clear on this, Vance, Parker said firmly. Miss Bennett was granted her divorce on grounds of abandonment and adultery. The judge gave her full custody of the child. You can petition the court if you want visitation rights, but that's about all you're entitled to. Henry raged and threatened, but eventually departed Provo, apparently deciding that his new life in Montana was preferable to a prolonged legal battle. With that final shadow lifted, Eliza and Beau began planning their future together. They were married in April, with the prairie blooming around them, in a simple ceremony at the ranch. Rose toddled down the makeshift aisle, scattering wildflower petals and giggling, while Mary stood as witness and the ranch hands cheered their boss and his bride. I, Beau James Donovan, take you, Eliza and Bennett, to be my lawfully wedded wife. Beau vowed, his voice strong and sure. To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. Eliza repeated the vows through happy tears, still amazed at how life could change in the space of 6 months from abandoned and desperate to loved and secure. That night, after the celebrations had ended and they were finally alone, Beau held Eliza close in the moonlit bedroom that was now theirs. "Happy, Mrs. Donovan?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she admitted. "When I was sitting outside that saloon last fall, I thought my life was over. I never imagined it was just beginning. The moment I saw you there, something told me you belonged here," Beau said. "With Rose, with the ranch. With me." "You were right," Eliza whispered, laying her head against his chest. "This is exactly where we belong." The years that followed brought changes to the Double D Ranch and to Provo itself. The railroad arrived as promised, bringing new prosperity to the region. Beau expanded the ranch operations, while Eliza started a small school for the ranch hands' children and neighboring families. Mary eventually married the town's new doctor, moving into Provo but remaining a frequent and beloved visitor to the ranch. Rose grew into a spirited young girl with her mother's beauty and her adoptive father's steadfast nature. When she was 4, she welcomed a baby brother, Daniel James Donovan, named for Beau's late brother. 2 years later, twins Emma and Ethan completed their family. On the 10th anniversary of the day Beau found Eliza outside the Rusty Nail Saloon, they sat together on the porch of their expanded ranch house, watching their children play in the yard as the sun set over the Wyoming landscape. "Any regrets?" Beau asked, his hand warm around hers. Eliza looked at the life they had built together, the thriving ranch, their beautiful children, the love that had only deepened with time, and smiled. "Not a single one. Everything that happened, even the painful parts, led me here to you. How could I regret that?" Beau leaned over and kissed her, still with the same tenderness as their first kiss. "I thank God every day for whatever twist of fate left you outside that saloon. And I thank God for the cowboy who said you're coming home with me," Eliza replied, resting her head on his shoulder as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of promise.